All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope all of you guys had a great weekend. Got a jam-packed show for you guys today. We're going to hit two games from the Sunday slate as the Houston Rockets came back late in a game that Milwaukee controlled throughout to get a big win as they continue their rise up through the Western Conference. After that, the Detroit Pistons won a big game on the road against the Philadelphia 76ers. I want to talk about how good Cade's been, as well as some of the lineup flexibility he gives them and what makes that team so difficult to deal with on the defensive end of the floor. And then at the tail end of the show, like we always do on Mondays, we have our latest edition of Power Rankings, breaking down the top 10 teams in the league. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Jackson's doing incredible work on our social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Make sure you guys follow us over there for more content throughout the year. And last but not least, if you guys want to get a mailbag question in our Friday mailbags, drop them in our full episodes on YouTube in the comments. Write mailbag with a colon, write your question. We'll get to them on Fridays throughout the remainder of the season. All right, let's talk some basketball, starting with Rockets Bucks. Again, a game that the Bucks controlled for the most part up until about the final 5 minutes. And it happened super fast. Giannis gets a putback. They're up by 8. And then all of a sudden, Amen Thompson gets an and one on a broken play where Kevin Durant's driving on an ISO. Ryan Rollins steps over to take a charge. Ryan Rollins was guarding Amen Thompson. So once Ryan Rollins ends up on the ground, Amen Thompson is effectively unguarded under the basket. He gets a putback and one. They go to the other end. And the Bucks run a really poorly executed two-man action. We talked about this a lot in the Knicks-Pacers series last year, but the concept of floor balance. When you're trying to keep the floor balance for your transition defense, you typically want to have at least one, if not two players above the break that are not crashing, whose job it is to get back in transition defense in case you miss or you turn the basketball over. And they ran a little dribble handoff, Giannis and Gary Trent at the top of the key. But while they ran that action, Giannis is rolling. Gary Trent's curling off of the DHO, so both guys are going downhill towards the basket, and they had both corners in the dunker spot occupied. So when Reed Shepherd makes a really nice back pressure play, getting over the top and blocking Gary Trent on his little shot, all 5 Bucks players are south of the foul line, which led to a very quick run out for Jabari Smith. So we get bang and one from Amen Thompson, little poor floor balance from the Bucks. All of a sudden, Jabari Smith's running out the other way for a foul, and that 8-point game is a 3-point game just like that. Next possession, Giannis forces a bad shot through a triple team along the left lane line, falls to the ground. When he's on the ground, that sparks a 5-on-4 for the Rockets. On the other end, Sengun beats Giannis down the floor and gets a dunk. Now it's a 1-point game. In less than 2 minutes of game clock, an 8-point game turned into a 1-point game. And then in the close game late, Kevin Durant just out-executed Giannis in the half court as Houston ended up getting the win. Giannis has been excellent all season, and he was excellent most of this game last night. But he made, or I should say yesterday in the afternoon, but he made several critical errors late, including 3 missed free throws, a pretty bad turnover where he misread Amen Thompson and help. We'll talk about that play later. He also offensive goaltended a Gary Trent Jr. jump shot that I think might have gone in even if he didn't touch it. So a couple of just uncharacteristic mistakes for Giannis down the stretch. And then on the other end, Kevin Durant just killed him. The Bucks tried all sorts of configurations to try to slow down KD and the KD Sengun two-man game, which has predictably become a staple for the Rockets down the stretch. And none of it worked. They tried Gary Trent Jr. on KD one-on-one. He easily got an and one against him, a little short jumper along the left elbow, left on an island. Gary Trent got too far up underneath him. He got scrappy. KD just shot right over the top of him, got an and one. They tried Giannis on him. So they moved Giannis over to KD. KD's attacking from the left elbow, same spot he was going against Gary Trent. Giannis is pressing up on him. And Houston was in this really weird spacing setup where they had Alperen Sengun on the opposite dunker spot and Amen Thompson just a couple feet away from him up the right lane line. So they had 2 Rockets kind of sitting right there in the lane. Gary Trent was guarding Jabari Smith, who was off on the right wing, opposite side. And for whatever reason, even though Ryan Rollins was already there, Miles Turner was already there, they were both in the paint because Sengun and Thompson were in the paint. Gary Trent sinks way in nail help And Kevin Durant just throws an easy swing pass to Jabari Smith on the right wing, who nails a three. Another nice little bit of shot creation from KD, but kind of a foolish set of help side defense there from the Bucks. They tried switching. They put Giannis on KD and Miles Turner on Sengun. They ran the high ball screen. They tried switching. And guess what? Miles on Kevin Durant. KD just promptly cooked him for a short little pull-up jumper, mimicking something he had done to Miles a couple times throughout the game. They tried, okay, so we put Miles on KD. That doesn't work. So we're going to have to do some sort of traditional coverage. Well, we'd prefer to have Giannis in help. So they move Giannis off the ball. They put Kyle Kuzma on Kevin Durant. And then instead of switching with Miles Turner, they just come up to the level. So Kuzma chases over the top. Up comes Miles Turner up to the level to get the ball out of KD's hands. What is the next progression there? Little pocket pass to Sengun in the short roll. Sengun gets deep on the short roll catch against Giannis and just patiently waits for a little angle and finishes a little left shoulder hook over the top. And then to close the game, Giannis tries ball pressuring KD. Giannis tries ball pressuring Alperen Sengun. Sengun ends up beating him with a little spin move, or a little right-handed drive into his spin move, and gets an and one that ends up icing the game. So, on the one hand, there's a little bit of like a thing that we saw with Milwaukee that I think is a harsh reality for them down the stretch of this game. So, for instance, everything that Milwaukee tried to create offensively down the stretch of this game in the half court was on the shoulders of Giannis against a very difficult Houston defense to try to score against. And then on the other end of the floor, I've been complimentary the Bucks and how the improvement from Brook to Miles Turner, and the improvement from Dame to Ryan Rollins, and the improvement from Taurean Prince to AJ Green in that starting lineup as athletes makes them better as a defense in the larger sample. But ultimately, against Houston, they had three dudes on the court that couldn't guard KD, and that put them into some coverage binds. And so there's some stuff with Milwaukee there that we'll get into in a little bit, but a really nice win for Houston to come back from behind on the road against a tough to beat Milwaukee team, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat late. I want a couple key call outs for Houston. Excellent defense late in the game. The Bucks ran a bunch of that classic kind of Giannis plus a shooter two-man game at the top of the key. They ran it some with Gary Trent. They ran it some with AJ Green, and Sengun did a great job not letting himself get screened so he can stay with Giannis. The guards did a good job staying attached to the shooters. They did not give up any easy shots on those sequences down the stretch. And then on Giannis's bully ball attacks, they swarmed him well and they rotated well. Amen Thompson had this amazing late game steal on Giannis with about a minute left, where Giannis draws two to the ball. So Giannis is driving. I think he gets Kevin Durant on a switch. He gets a little screen with Kuzma because Sengun was originally guarding Giannis. They switch it, right? So Kuzma runs through to the right corner trying to pull Sengun out of the play. Giannis drives on KD and gets way deep down to the left block. On that sequence, Sengun leaves Kuzma and goes and basically double teams Giannis, right? So Kyle Kuzma's wide open in the right corner. But Amen Thompson, who's guarding Ryan Rollins on the right wing, Ryan Rollins goes and relocates to the opposite wing, and Amen Thompson makes a really smart read. He sees Ryan Rollins going, but he knows that that's behind Giannis. Like Giannis has his back turned to where Ryan Rollins is, and Kuzma's man is the man double teaming. So Amen Thompson just goes, he's probably going to try to throw it to Kuzma, not to Rollins. And so he peels off and switches to Kuzma in perfect timing with when Giannis throws the pass, and Amen Thompson is right there in the passing lane to get the steal. Just a huge defensive play from Amen Thompson. A lot of those kinds of, again, staying glued to Giannis in the two-man game with the guards, not losing the shooters, not giving up any easy shots in those sequences, and then swarming Giannis late for a bad miss on a triple team along the left lane line, and then forcing the turnover on the kick out on that play with a minute left. Really, really nice defense. They use that defense to get to transition as well. Again, we talked about the Jabari Smith foul. We talked about the Sengun dunk. Just really impressive defense down the stretch from Houston. And then lastly, once again down the stretch, and we've talked about this a lot this season, the Rockets just have really reliable offensive options, and many of them. And a lot more than they did in the past, to say the least. Like KD was a real matchup problem for the Bucks down the stretch. Their guards were too small for him, and their center was too slow for them. And so as a result, there were basically only two guys on the floor who had any shot to make Kevin Durant work hard, Giannis and Kyle Kuzma, and that put the Bucks into a coverage bind. They couldn't switch without giving up a bad matchup, either against a guard or against Miles Turner. And when they put two on the ball, that allowed Sengun to work in the short roll, where he's absolutely deadly. And as I mentioned, that's a little bit revealing on the Bucks front, like we talked about earlier with some of their personnel. But that's the difference. On one end of the floor, Giannis has to do everything offensively against an elite defense, while on the other end of the floor, Houston's got options. And that's one of the bits that's been really apparent to me early in the season watching Houston. For whatever you want to say about their shooting, for whatever you want to say about their collective lack of offensive polish, they just have three legitimately awesome offensive players, two of which are playing at or near the superstar level, which is giving them just a lot of options to break the defense down at the beginning of possessions. It just seeing the juxtaposition of those two situations between Kevin Durant and Sengun versus just Giannis. It was just fascinating to see. And, honestly, I really like this Bucks team. I like watching them. I think they're a fun watch. I was higher on them than most coming into the season, even though I was probably still too low on them. Like, they're even better than I thought they would be. But unfortunately, this is likely how their story ends this year. They just ultimately have some personnel limitations when they run into the best teams in the NBA. But another really nice win for the Rockets, who have now won 6 out of 7. 20 more offensive rebounds yesterday. The only team in the NBA right now to average over 20 second chance points per game. They're up to 8th in defense to start the year. That's been ticking up over the last few games. Still first in offense after 9 games. 3rd in net rating and up to 5th in the Western Conference standings. And obviously a lot of negativity surrounding Milwaukee in this particular segment. So one little bit of Bucks positivity to cleanse the bad game from your memory. I still thought Ryan Rollins was amazing again yesterday. When the wheels were coming off late in the game, he was the one bright spot that kept them in the game. He had a huge 3 against a soft closeout off the left wing. He toasted Amen Thompson for a layup off the dribble, one-on-one on the left wing, a really impressive athletic play. He had a huge offensive rebound late that got Giannis to the foul line. He's just a really good player. And he's a big part of what has made the Bucks better this year than what they've looked like on paper. All right, moving on to Pistons Sixers. My goodness, is Cade Cunningham on a crazy roll right now. He had 26 points and 11 assists last night. In his last 6 games, he's averaging 29 points and 11 assists per game. His fourth quarter run against Philly down the stretch of that game was a damn highlight reel. He had this spin move against Kelly Oubre. It was ridiculous. He's right at the kind of foul line area, and he wants to set up the spin, so he sets it up with like a right to left cross. And then on the right to left cross, right when the ball hits his left hand, he just whips over his left shoulder in a spin move, just toasts Kelly, goes right down the lane and just hits like a right-handed, like scooping hook shot in the lane. Just an unbelievable highlight. And then he starts to kind of cook the Sixers in like basic pick and roll 2-on-2 scoring. So like getting over the top of the screen, having the defender pinned on his backside. He kind of like works into the lane and finds a little angle for a right-handed bank shot over Andre Drummond. Similarly, same sort of thing off the left side. Gets the defender trapped on his backside. Jalen Duren kind of clears a little bit of space in the lane as he's rolling, and he finds a little angle for a left-handed bank shot off the glass. And so as a result, as he's just cooking, Philly ends up having no choice but to just blitz Cade all over the floor, and at some point sending straight up double teams even without a screen. And that was just the damage that Cade was doing, which was breaking Philly's defense. And then honestly, like what was really impressive was a lot of times you'll see guys when the double teams start to come and the blitzes start to come, they'll just stop being aggressive. They'll be like, oh, I've done my job. I'm bringing the second defender, just going to get rid of the ball and play basketball. But he found 2 opportunities to score against double teams late in the game that were both really impressive. One where he's targeting Tyrese Maxey, calls for a ball screen on the right side. Tyrese goes to the right side like he's going to go ahead and offer that blitz as Cade comes off the screen. And all Cade does is just cross over right to left away from the double team and goes down the lane and just dunks all over Andre Drummond's face. Then there's another one late in the game where they bring a double team, just a straight up double team. This one was poorly executed by Philly. Cade standing up, like left wing extended like 40 feet from the basket. Kelly Oubre's shading him towards his left hand. So he's like taking away his right hand, leaving that left-handed drive open. And Quentin Grimes brings the double team from that right-hand side from Cade. So essentially, Kelly's already taking away the right hand, and yet you're bringing the double to the right hand. And so Cade's like, all right, thanks, guys. Just drives to the left, goes right by Kelly, gets way down into the teeth of the defense. Obviously, the help is there. Just pounds a dribble over his left shoulder and hits a little short left shoulder fadeaway in the lane that basically ices the game. So torches the team into double teaming him, scores against the double team twice, makes a bunch of quality plays out of the double teams that led to closeout opportunities for guys like Asar Thompson and Ron Holland, who both, by the way, credit to those guys, they each hit massive mid-range pull-up jump shots in crunch time that helped close the deal for them. But like Cade was just fantastic down the stretch. And here's where I want to call attention to the luxury of having a guy like Cade in a way that you wouldn't think. So like, I know that the Cade-Luka comparisons have been done to death. And I don't want to overly retread that ground here. But one of the things I've noticed with Luka over the years is he's so good on offense that it gives the coaching staff flexibility to surround him with defensive players that have offensive limitations. Because on the one hand, they have the ability to score in precarious situations when multiple defenders are involved, which is what you're going to face when you have limited offensive players around you. Guys are going to leave their men to come help, right? And then the second piece of it is, because of the advantages that they create, even the limited offensive players can have more success than you think because of like having a closeout. For instance, the Ron Holland little pull-up jumper he hits that driving a closeout. It's not a jumper that he is going to hit as efficiently if he's facing a squared up defender, right? That's the advantage. And down the stretch of this game, Detroit was able to go with a lineup that had Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, and Javonte Green on the floor. That's a really difficult group of guards and wings to score against. Now, typically in lineup construction, you'd be worried about their ability to score, but Cade finds a way to score with that group, which then gives you the ability to play them all together on defense. And that trio of players in 88 possessions this year, according to Cleaning the Glass, has logged a 101 defensive rating, which is like off the charts good. And they did a number on the Sixers down the stretch of this game. Everything was super tough for Tyrese Maxey. He had 33 points. He was 10 for 26 from the field. And look, he's an unbelievable player. He's going to make some unbelievable plays. He's going to get downhill. He hit a ridiculous step back three over Javonte Green on the left wing. That was nasty down the stretch of this game. But you made him work hard, and he had several big misses late. And a big part of that was Detroit's guards starting to win some of those battles, starting to win that like point of attack battle so that the chest is squared up, walling up, so that some of these floaters that Tyrese is taking are not open floaters, but are contested floaters, which is what's going to play him into misses more frequently. Karis LeVert had a big possession in the second half where he slid his feet, stayed in front. Instead of it being an open floater, it was a contested floater. By the way, Karis had a really nice game off the bench, looking more like the guy that I hoped he would be for Detroit. Javonte Green had a similar rep in crunch time where he slid his feet and walled up, kept his chest in front of Tyrese, and Tyrese missed the floater. As we talk about, Tyrese is going to make some of those. He's going to hit half of his floaters, maybe a little bit more. But like, if you're going to play him into more of the miss side of that spectrum, it's going to be something under your control in the form of whether or not you're positioning yourself between him and the rim and making it into a more difficult shot. We spent a lot of time this year talking about how physical and strong Detroit is on the front line. And they certainly are. Jalen Duren was amazing again last night, continuing his monster start to the year. The two big lineup is something they've gone to this year and had success with. But they also just have an excellent core of perimeter defenders. And when you've got that combination, when you've got your front court playing the way that they're playing, as big and physical as they are, as resilient as they are to bully ball players, but then you also have the speed on the perimeter to hang with the fastest guards in the league, it just comes together to make a very strong defensive foundation. And when you anchor it on the other end of the floor with a transcendently great offensive player in Cade Cunningham, that is just a proven formula in the NBA. And for all the talk about Cade on offense, again, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the little bits of offensive contribution down the line. Karis LeVert hitting the threes. Duncan Robinson hits a big three in the second half. Ron Holland and Asar Thompson hit those little mid-range jump shots. Jalen Duren doing work on the offensive glass. They're just getting enough contributions down the line. Big win for Detroit on the road. Up to 8-2 on the season. Sole possession of the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Third best defense in the NBA in the early going. The offense is starting to come around. Help will be on the way at some point this season in the form of either Jaden Ivey or a trade. It's a lot to be excited about if you're a Detroit Pistons fan. Couple of notes on the Sixers. Wasn't all bad this weekend. They got a nice win against Toronto on Saturday night, who's feisty. VJ Edgecombe continued his ascent in that game with 2 massive crunch time baskets. He drove a closeout out of the left corner in crunch time where he caught on the move and jabbed going left and somehow changed direction at full speed back towards the middle and hit like a shot in the lane. That was like an absurdly athletic play. Hit one of those patented little mid-range pull-ups, one of the ones I've been talking about as like his ability to get to his spots because of his athleticism. But we did see some of the team's personnel limitations in the Detroit game. The first piece is that they're small. There were several sequences late in the game where their best lineup, because it has 3 guards, they'd end up with a guard in help side. Drummond would get pulled out of the paint for one reason or another. Kelly Oubre's guarding the ball. So you'd end up having somebody who's like 6'3" or shorter, 6'4" or shorter helping at the rim. And that's just a difficult job for a help side defender who's giving up that much size. And all I kept thinking about as I was watching is like, I think it's silly to pretend that this team couldn't use a guy like Paul George. Like there was a pretty rough Jabari Walker shift there in the second half. And all I could think was, yeah, let's give those minutes to Paul George and let's see what happens. I mean, we'll see if Paul George ever plays basketball again, but if he's healthy and he's able to play, he's going to help them because there are some rotation minutes going to guys that Paul's just a better basketball player than. And also, I thought that was the type of the game where Joel Embiid could have been of big service. And of course, it was a back-to-back, so he wasn't playing, and we'll see if he ends up playing in the big picture. But if you look at Philly in terms of whether or not they're any sort of playoff threat, you run into teams that are super athletic on the perimeter, and it makes life harder on Tyrese Maxey. That's not to say that he can't still generate offense, but it's just harder for him. He has to work harder to try to score against the elite athletes every time down the floor. And all I could think of is like Joel Embiid is a release valve there. He's a guy that you'd be able to give the ball to against a smaller, quicker team and be able to generate some quality shots. I'd argue Paul George helps with that too. Like Kelly Oubre, who's had some good offensive moments to start the season, and there have been some plays where he's gotten downhill and hit those little short floaters and short jump shots and has helped the team offensively, but he had a really bad stretch offensively down the stretch of this game, missing clean looks from 3, missing shots near the basket. That's usage that can go to better offensive players when they're actually healthy and put together. Sixers starting to lose some ground. They've lost 4 out of 6, and the defense has been brutal over the course of that stretch. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. We've entered into our favorite time of the year. Between the NBA and college hoops, there's basketball on every night. And every night is a shot to score a major bucket on Hard Rock Bet. You're home for hoops action all season long. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet yet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. And if you're not sure what to place your first bet on, check out the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. It's loaded with trends, streaks, and stats to help guide your picks. Numbers don't lie, and neither does the data in there. Check out the Stats Hub now, get the edge, and bet with confidence. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app is the only legal sportsbook for whenever you're in Florida, and it's also live in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado. Coming soon to more states too. Plus, Hard Rock Bet offers new promos every single day. So whenever you're listening, just open the app and check out what you've got any day of the week. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. All right, let's get into our power rankings. You guys know the drill. We're just going to work from 10 up to 1. This is focused strictly on the regular season. This is not contender rankings. I'm also going to give you guys the championship lines as we work our way through the list. All of our lines are presented by Hard Rock Bet. Number 10, the Milwaukee Bucks, currently on Hard Rock Bet at plus 4,000 to win the title. They're 6-4 to start the year. There were 4 teams that had 6-4 records, and the tiebreaker for me for Milwaukee was that they had the tougher strength of schedule out of that group. They've won 4 games against teams that are 500 or better. The other 6-4 teams, Miami, Minnesota, and Philly, they've combined to win 4 games against teams that are 500 or better. So that's why I gave Milwaukee the nod here at 10. Disappointing collapse against Houston yesterday in the afternoon, obviously. It showed some of their matchup-specific limitations. Giannis basically had to create everything down the stretch against that Houston defense. And they had 3 guys on the court who had no shot to guard Kevin Durant, which ended up being a problem. And some of those are realities that Milwaukee will have to contend with when they face the top-level competition throughout the season. But overall, they continue to be much better than anybody expected to start the season. A very complementary team that has a strong foundation on both ends of the floor. A good mix of rim pressure and shooting on offense and hard-playing athletic guards next to layered rim protection on defense. Again, if you want some more detail on the Bucks, we hit them in a segment earlier today in the show. Number 9, the New York Knicks, currently plus 1,300 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. The offense has caught fire in their 4-game winning streak. They have a 131 offensive rating in that 4-game span. 6 players averaging double figures, 3 players averaging over 20 points per game. Really starting to reap some of the benefits of all that movement and passing that we talked about as they've moved up into 5th in pass frequency among NBA teams. They're also starting to establish the transition habits that they talked so much about in training camp, but that weren't really there to start the season. In fact, in their first 5 games, according to Synergy, they averaged just 18.6 points per game in transition. In their 4-game winning streak, 34 points per game just in transition as they continue to run everyone off the floor. They are up to 3rd now in the Eastern Conference. Number 8, the Chicago Bulls, plus 10,000 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. Looked like they were on the verge of a signature win in Cleveland until Donovan Mitchell just went on an insane scoring run down the stretch that snatched the win away. He hit a huge 3 in the final minute along the right side that ended up giving them the lead. The Bulls have now dropped 3 out of 4 after their 5-0 start. The offense has come back down to earth, and the defense has been bad. They have a 120 defensive rating in that 4-game stretch. It's basically transition or bust for them right now. They're averaging 43 transition points per game over that 1-3 stretch. So maintaining that identity, but their half-court efficiency has been below a point per possession in each of the 4 games and below 0.9 of a point per possession in 2 of those games. Also having some issues with transition defense, which is undercutting some of that transition offense. They're giving up 29 points per game in transition over that span on the other end of the floor. Number 7, the Cleveland Cavaliers, plus 750 right now on Hard Rock Bet to win the title. Huge win that Donovan Mitchell snatched from the jaws of defeat with late game shot making versus the Bulls. Darius Garland had to sit out because it was the second end of a back-to-back, and he's obviously working his way back from a toe injury. But that's a tough game on a back-to-back without Darius Garland, and Donovan just got the job done late. But the real story for Cleveland is the return of Darius Garland. I've talked for a while about how I view a healthy Darius Garland as the real engine of this offense because he's just very good at getting the ball quickly into the teeth of the defense, and he relentlessly makes the kick-out reads that get them into their drive and kick attack. And yeah, he's a little bit rusty, and he's got a ways to go to get back to 100%, but you can already see how much he helps this offense. It was fun. I was watching some footage this morning of him against Washington and seeing him get blow-bys for layups and hitting Jared Allen for dunks and pick and roll and just making simple reads out of screening actions as guys slip or as guys dig down off of corners. And it's just great to have him back. And it's paying dividends already. The Cavs have logged a 131 offensive rating in 54 minutes with Darius Garland on the floor so far. The Cavs have won 4 in a row, climbed all the way up to 2nd in the Eastern Conference. Number 6, the Houston Rockets, plus 1,000 right now to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. Winners of 6 out of 7, up to 5th in the in the Western Conference. The story of the season for the Rockets, for me, continues to be their offense. They're still number 1 in offensive rating after 9 games, and it just makes sense when you watch them. The KD Sengun pick and roll predictably has become their pet action, and it continues to be a huge problem for teams to guard. Like, if you switch it, you're going to give a favorable matchup to one of those 2 guys who are just monster one-on-one players. And if you come up to the level against KD, it unlocks the Sengun-Thompson short roll combination, which has been such a problem for teams to match up with. And the Bucks really had no good options down the stretch yesterday as the Rockets scored over and over again. The only real option you have is to help off of Josh Okogie, which worked on one possession against Milwaukee down the stretch as they forced a corner 3 out of the left side that he missed. But That's eventually going to be Dorian Finney-Smith. So good luck with that. Houston's looking really good. We talked in more depth about Houston at the top of the show today. You guys can find that in our full episode on YouTube if you're checking this out in a breakout clip. Number 5, the San Antonio Spurs, currently plus 3,000 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. Things got a little dark for them as they dropped back-to-back games against the Lakers and Suns, where they really struggled with double teams of Victor Wembanyama, but they started to figure that out down the stretch in the Lakers game as they got a couple of scores and then a clean look for Devin Vassell before before Victor Wembanyama fouled out. And a lot of those concepts translated to the Houston game. To make a long story short, they're having Wemby work from the elbows more. They always have Harrison Barnes or Julian Champagnie in that strong side corner, so he's got a really easy kick-out read to a great corner three-point shooter. They're consistently keeping a good above-the-break shooter, usually Devin Vassell or Harrison Barnes on that opposite wing. And then they're putting Stephen Castle in the dunker spot, which is putting him in a situation where he can be more of a threat while not being the one pass away three-point shooter, which is going to be a lower value kick out for Victor Wembanyama. And by the way, Steph Castle had a huge offensive rebound in crunch time against Houston that led to a kick out three for Julian Champagnie. Julian and Harrison Barnes, by the way, hit 8 threes in the second half against Houston as they got that big win. But again, like Steph Castle is going to beat most of the smaller guards that are guarding him in jumping contests around the rim. That's a really good spot for him to be a threat while also not being the obvious one pass away read. You want Victor's one pass away reads to be knockdown shooters so that if it's an easy read for Wemby, he's going to make you pay. Put Steph in a position where he's more of a threat there under the basket. And now they have De'Aaron Fox back to help them generate some cleaner looks for Wemby off the ball. Fox looked great in his first game. Most importantly, De'Aaron hit 4 of his 8 jump shots, which is obviously going to be the biggest swing factor for him this year. Nice little two-game win streak for the Spurs to get back on track in a really impressive win against a very good Houston Rockets team. Number 4, the Denver Nuggets, currently plus 550 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. Just cruising to wins last week against a pretty light phase of their schedule. Still really struggling to get Cam Johnson going. He's not aggressive as he needs to be, and it's keeping him out of rhythm right now. But man, is Tim Hardaway Jr. having no problem at all fitting in. Another monster game from him against the Pacers. 17 points, 5 threes, plus 24 in 24 minutes. Denver is currently the only team in the NBA that is in the top 3 of both offensive rating and defensive rating. That said, they have played a very light schedule in the early going, and things will get much tougher for them this week. All on the road against Sacramento, in Los Angeles for the Clippers, and in Minnesota against a Timberwolves team that has won 4 out of 5. So some good tests for the Nuggets on the horizon after a light schedule to start the year. Number 3, the Los Angeles Lakers, currently plus 1,500 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. They got the nod for me. We had 4 teams with 7 wins. The Lakers ended up getting the nod for me over the other 7-win teams because of their strength of schedule. They've played the 4th toughest schedule in the league to start, and they have 5 wins over teams that are 500 or better, which is tied for the most in the NBA to start the season. They did drop their first stinker since opening night against the Warriors. They've been pretty much excellent, but they dropped their first stinker on Saturday against the Atlanta Hawks. We covered that game on playback. Those of you guys who were there with me, kind of was a textbook trap game. Atlanta missing most of their guys, but they're still very athletic and they're going to play very hard at home. And right away, you could tell in the opening minutes as they were giving up multiple back cuts and some easy transition layups when they didn't get back. The Lakers just weren't ready to match the level of intensity in transition and in their off-ball attentiveness that they needed, and they just got cut to pieces. But fortunately, that's been a rarity for them to start the season. Still very high on this team. They've been the 3rd best half-court offense in the entire NBA, despite out of 30 possible games for their stars, LeBron, Luka, and Austin, they've got just 13 games played combined between those 3 guys, and they're the 3rd best half-court offense in the NBA. I think that might be one of the best units in the NBA, a very strong foundation for them to have success in the regular season. We'll see if they can get back on track tonight against the Charlotte Hornets. Number 2, the Detroit Pistons. Not going to spend too long here because we talked about them earlier in the show. We did a full segment. So Pistons fans, if you're checking this out in a breakout clip, go to our full episode. You can find that a little bit further back on our feed on YouTube. We did a breakdown of their win in Philly from last night. But they looked phenomenal defensively down the stretch in that Sixers game with their 3-guard combination of Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, and Javonte Green. They've been the 3rd best defense in the NBA in the early going, and Cade is looking like a bona fide MVP candidate 29 points and 11 assists per game over his last 6 games on 61% true shooting. Again, we covered them in more detail earlier. A lot to be excited about if you're a Detroit Pistons fan, currently plus 6,000 on Hard Rock Bet to win the title. And last but not least, number one for the second straight week, the Oklahoma City Thunder, currently plus 230 on Hard Rock Bet to win the title. They dropped a game last week in Portland where they got picked apart in the fourth quarter by Denny Avdia. Shea also looked a little bit tired in that game as he left several jumpers short off the front of the rim. But they got back on track by eviscerating the Kings. And then they got a nice win in Memphis where Shea closed the deal with some shot making down the stretch. There was this hilarious post-game interview with Chet because Shea ends up hitting 2 step-back threes off the left wing. One really tough one and then another one of those like kind of textbook little in and out dribble step-backs that he hit. And after the game, Chet Holmgren's talking about how he like basically went up to Shea and told him to stop settling. And then Shea ended up closing the game with 2 step-back threes anyway. Chet basically said that Shea shut him up with that. But things are going to get tougher for the Thunder. It's been a good timing for the Thunder to deal with some injuries here early in the season. They've had the second easiest schedule in the league to start the year. As a matter of fact, just one of their last 9 wins have come against teams that are 500 or better. They have a couple of tougher ones this week against the Warriors and the Lakers, but Steph's coming back from an illness that's had him out for a week. And the Lakers, again, are probably not going to have Austin Reeves, and so it'll be no Austin or LeBron. And then after those 2 games, things lighten up for the Thunder again. They play Charlotte, New Orleans, Sacramento, and Utah. So if they can get through the Warriors and Lakers, who are both banged up, so I think they will, they're going to be sitting at 16-1 in 2 weeks. And we'll be talking about them as a legitimate threat to go 74-8. And again, this is while they've been banged up. They've got reinforcements on the way for when their schedule inevitably gets tougher. There's, again, when it comes to the strength of schedule stuff, it's all just about when, right? Like if you're in the Western Conference, you might have a light stretch here or there, but it's going to get tougher. And the Thunder are just getting the easy part out here when they've got the guys out of the lineup. So it's setting up nicely for them to make a run at a real 70-win season here to add that to their resume with this young core. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. We'll be back tomorrow with more game reaction. I will see you guys then.